Hello, hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle Boudreau of February Rose, and today I'm super excited because I got this amazing bouquet, and it has larkspur in it, which you don't just see every day. I mean, I don't anyway. It also has delphinium, but I'm really excited about the larkspur because I've been getting so many people asking me for a tutorial, and I absolutely love doing my tutorials with live references as I can. You know, I can go to the supermarket and buy roses any day, but larkspur, very exciting. So if you are interested in a step-by-step watercolor tutorial on larkspur, then keep watching. Okay, next thing we're gonna do is we are going to choose our brushes. Again, you can use any brush that you want. I'm gonna show you how to use a cat's tongue. Cat's tongue brush is gonna probably be the easiest way to create these sharp edges on this flower. They're like pointy little petal edges on the flower, if you can see that. But you can still do that with a round brush. See how there's a point on here? So I'm gonna demonstrate that. A dagger brush is really great to create these little sprigs. You can also do that with your round brush, but I'm gonna just show you how you can use a dagger brush. I love using a dagger brush. It's one of my favorites. This is a dagger brush also. And then I'll show you what I'm gonna do with this little round brush. So today we're gonna use my Canson XL paper in 11 by 15. This is a great paper to practice with and for beginners. So I love to do all my watercolor type drills and my tutorials on this paper because it does have a great tooth to it and it's very durable. But we're just gonna start by looking at the flowers. The petals on these are a little bit sharper and pointier at the tips. They're not as rounded as some petals are. So they have these little tiny dots in the middle, if you can see that. They're white with little pink touches to it. I think today we won't do white because white in itself is definitely a little bit more of a difficult thing to accomplish with watercolor. It's like its own lesson. So today maybe we'll do a light pink or purple just so we can like get the shape down, and then one day we will do a watercolor tutorial on white petals. Usually at the tip there will be buds and these will open up. See how this one opened up on the top? This is actually like the perfect flower here. But yeah, the buds will eventually become flowers. So some of them will be closed. Very tip, these are all closed. And then some start opening up as they go down the stalk. And then we have this like very frilly, I don't even know what to call this. It's so fun though. So I always like to swatch my kits. This is the Mungyo colors. So like, see how some of these greens look almost like you can use them right from the pan and you don't have to do much mixing. But when I do something like this, I will sort of try to match what goes, and it's just easier for me. So we've got a little bit of a cool green here. So you don't have to be so specific and matchy-matchy. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix these together to create like a little bit of deepness. So let's do the second one in here. Mix that up. I always like to pre-mix. I don't want to do it as I go, but you can do whatever works for you. And then this one is the third one in. And you see how I just mix those two together and it's giving that like nice blue color in there. Let's do like a lighter pink for the petals. So I'm gonna mix up some pink over here. I'm gonna mix this fun pink, and then I'm gonna add in, if you hear the dog, I'm sorry. I think I'm gonna mix in a little bit of this just to give it a little depth there so you can see it on camera. So let's start with this cat's tongue brush. Go back into that pink. So again, like we said, these are very like sharp at the edges. So I'm just gonna use that brush. I'm just gonna start creating these marks. And you can go the opposite way. You can see if you pull it this way and then pull it that way and use your wrist like this, it's gonna give you a little bit more of a free, sort of loose flower. But we just like to start first by just practicing those marks. And you can go up, you can go down like this. And these are going to be the structure of your petals. You could use the side of the cat's tongue brush because you will have some flowers that are facing upwards. See how this one is facing a little bit more upwards? So those petals will tend to go out like this from the side. This is a side view. And then maybe this one will be sticking up. See what I'm saying here? So you can practice, just get used to your brush. Now if you don't have a cat's tongue brush, that is fine. So you could use a 6, you could use an 8. And you're just gonna do the same exact thing. Just gonna mark the page, maybe go out a little further and pull it back together. Because if you're just gonna press down on a 6, it might not be big enough. And you could just mark, mark. Like that. Again, you can go from this angle and pull. See how we were pressing down, pulling out, pressing down, pulling out to meet to that center point. And now as you start to practice and you get more comfortable, you can start creating the flower itself and putting all these petals together. So if you need to look, let's look at this one because this one's like the perfect flower here. See how they are layered? So you have some petals underneath and then on top. So we're gonna do that bottom layer first, and then we'll have to go back in once it's dry and add the top layers. So I'll do it with the round brush. This is gonna, just like to imagine a circle here. If you need, you can draw one in, you can paint one in. But I just like to imagine it and just put them together. Let's just say we do 5 or 6. I don't know the exact, it's hard to count when there's so many. I would say there was probably 6 in here, but it doesn't matter for practice. I have room for 6 here, 5 here, so we'll start with that. And you can always go back in, add some color to it while it's still wet. And these are very like flowy almost, so you can add these little lines to create that idea of movement. There are no rules, there's no exact way to do anything, okay? Let's practice with the cat's tongue brush. Same concept, just gonna press down. And it's sort of gonna give you that shape that you're looking for without really doing too much movement. Same thing here. Press that together and you could use the tip of the brush. I wanna go from here. And then again from here. And you could always add in color. You can always drop in some more color. See how I'm adding in? But you want to remember you're going to layer this. So you don't want it to be too dark. You still want to see some paper through, so don't go too opaque. You want to go back and layer these. So the flowers on top, like that are layered, they seem a little bit smaller. I don't know if you can see that, but they seem a little bit smaller. The ones on the bottom are larger. There's actually several layers. I don't know if this is a different breed or species of larkspur. I'm sure there's plenty. This is a very layered flower. So there seems to be like 3 or 4 layers on this. So let's just start with 2 layers and go from there. So see how these petals meet here? We're gonna want to stagger them so that they are not exactly on top of each other. So stagger them like that. So this petal is peeking out of there. I'm using a little bit more pigment in this. Always go back in and dip in there. So it's a little bit darker than the ones on the bottom. See, we could just create that shape here with the brush. You want the tips to stay kind of pointy. And they don't have to be perfect. This is practice. So now these are layered. See how fun that is? Let's practice with the cat's tongue on this one. I want you to be able to use whatever you have at home. I don't want you to worry and think that you need a certain brush to do a certain thing. There's so many different layers to watercolor. Some people don't even use, they only use one brush. Some people only use dagger brushes. It's whatever you like. So we're gonna just do that same thing. We're gonna layer, almost just using the brush itself to create that shape. And the fun thing with a cat's tongue is you can sort of press, like let's say we just press down and we can like sort of wiggle it a little and it gives you that nice flowy look. You could do that with any brush. I just love the way that it sort of just use that brush and it just does the work for you. Just so fun. This is a good brush for dahlias. You could just really work around. And you could use the sides. I just really like, this brush is fun. Now that we have this, if you want, I'll do it on this one. If you want, you can go back in a little bit darker and we can do some real tiny layers right here. It's still a little bit too wet. Should we let it dry a little? Probably. Do we have the patience? No. So let's just do some layers in there. Very light stroke. And just kind of tap it on there and see how these are just smaller, but they're still staggered between those petals, creating that layered effect. And if this does pool like that, just blot your brush or use a clean brush and you can pull up that pigment with a dry brush and you can fix that. It's not a big deal. And it's nice to see all the different bleeds and all that in watercolor. So we'll let this one dry a little bit and we'll go right into this one. So we're gonna do the center is gonna have these little dots. So you can see them here. Actually, I'm gonna use this tiny brush for it. You can create these little tiny dots just by stippling. Just by stippling like that. And you get these little dots. If you were looking at these from the side, you would have these little dots like that, and they would have little stems coming out like that. And then this would be the petal here. So you can see it from the side on this one. You can see it from the side on this one. So these sort of go out. This is very light. These sort of go out like that. And the petals sort of opening up. And then this would be where the stem is here. So you'd see the stem from the back. And go into these and add these very fine lines to give it a little bit more detail. Like this. Good. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're not working like exact. We're just kind of giving the idea. Now this is kind of looking like a poinsettia because of the colors, but same idea that poinsettias are layered. And then we're gonna put our little dots in the center. And next we're gonna go on to practicing little, whatever you wanna call them. I guess these are the leaves. We're just gonna start with the motion. So let's start over here. So you're just gonna mark your paper. You're just gonna create all these little marks. And you're just gonna drag and lift. Drag from this way and lift. See how it's in the wrist? And it's not gonna be overnight, so if this is your first time doing this, please keep going. You're never gonna learn if you quit. So just keep marking, keep making movements. You have to get used to it. You have to build muscle memory. If you feel like your marks are too thick, like if you're pressing down too hard, and let's do it with a round brush, just because most people have this shape. These are a little bit more specialty, I would probably say. Like I would start with a round brush if you're just a beginner, because you could do the same exact motions. See how we're using the tip of that brush and dragging and then lifting. Drag from this direction. So my hands are going like this, straight up and down. And we're just gonna, if you want, you can sort of twist the brush to give more organic movements. Like you could twist it in your hand like this, if that makes sense. And you're just kind of dancing on the paper. And if you want to do quick movements, like let's say from here, you could just do little quick strokes, like mark making on your paper. Well, let's do the buds. You can use your brush just to make the buds, just by doing this, and you got a bud. Again, this, bud. So simple. So this is the bud itself, and then this is the stem. Let's do another bud here. See how that connects? You can start by painting your stem out and then building up from that stem. So we'll build some stems out and we will add another bud right in there. These are in front, so you can literally just put a bud right in front on the line. It's just gonna be a little bit darker. See how that brought it to the front? As it goes down, the buds sort of open. So you can use your brush itself, to create like opening buds like this. So let's try on this side. I'm working a little bit smaller, but let's see, we do a little bit of an opening of a bud. And then they kind of peek out the back. Well, like this, like that, give you a nice little bud. And they don't have to be perfect. I mean, these are very loose and flowy. And they all come off each other like this. See how these are sort of together? So you can do adjoined stems like that if you want. So you're gonna go down like that and you can pull one out like this and create a whole nother plant with a whole nother set of buds. And it's a little bit too thick there, but it's okay. So now if you want to just practice painting some buds, you can go over here and just practice. They come back to this round tip here, and they're all different. And then it has that tip there. You can close it and then add a little bit on the outside to open it. And once these dry, you can go back in and add the detail also. So this is going to be sort of coming out. Now let's say you have one that is opening like this. So this one's like opening and there's a flower that's coming, it's blooming. So we're gonna do, from that kind of a perspective, we'll do a bud that, let's start with the stem here. And then it's gonna come out like this. And these are opening, they're opening up. So you can do 4, you could do 3, whatever you want. And then you could do it while it's still a little wet if you like the look of the bleeds. What I mean by that is adding the color of the flower that is going to be blooming. So I'm just going to like roughly sketch in some of these leaves here, because they're just going to be like blooming out and they're not going to be developed so much yet. It's just going to give you that idea of like a blooming bud. Even some of these, maybe they have some already coming out. Maybe they're blooming. Some of them might even have like a little tip peeking out. These are white, so it's harder to tell. But this one, maybe that has, it almost looks like a carnation, but maybe that's opening up. Once you're comfortable, you can put them all together right here. So we'll put one right here and we will learn how to put together the whole larkspur. So I've mixed up some of my paint again. And again, if you don't have all these colors, if you have like sap green, if you have moss green, use what you have. It does not have to be exact. We're sort of just practicing. We're getting the likeness of the plant. It doesn't need to be exact colors, okay? It doesn't. So don't worry. So now I'm gonna just start, I'm gonna have it kind of leaning like this at an angle. So I'm just gonna sort of run my brush down the page, and it's okay to keep lifting. You can do it one swoop if you want. That's not like the easiest thing in the world to do. It takes a little time, a little practice. You might get it right away. But I am just sort of lifting my hand and going back down just to get that shape. And then say we want something to come out from the side, like how this is connected, we'll do that. So you'll go from there and just pull it out like that. And let's see, that's a little bit bigger. The specifics are not that important. I'm just gonna start with some buds on the top that are closed. And they're coming off, like no matter what, they're gonna be coming off a stem. So you're just gonna add these little tiny stems. And I'm making these shapes. Now this one's coming out a little like this. And I'm just looking at it as a reference. I'm not doing it exact. This one's, it's opening. So it's opening up. These are opening. And as we go down further, they're starting to bloom. See how this bud that we practice is dried? You can go back in and you can draw down the center. This is gonna make it appear like it's closed, but it would open. So this one's opening a little. And then we're gonna keep just going down the line until you feel like you wanna add flowers. This one's opening big. And trust me, this is still a learning experience for me. So I'm gonna add a little bit of pink in that while it's still wet, because I love the look of the bleeds. And I'm gonna start to put in some stems that I know are gonna be for flowers. So there's one stem there, and these are all bunched. So these ones are a little bit more separate. So I'm gonna, for the sake of that, I'm just gonna use this one as an example. So you see how these stems are a little bit more separated and the flowers are not so bunched together, there's space. We'll do that. And I'm just gonna clean my brush. And I'm gonna just start to paint those shapes of those flowers that we did. And maybe I will do 6 on that one. Just mark your paper. And if this is too much, you can make them face, you can just practice the flower themselves or just mark the paper. It does not need to be exact. So these are facing us. Some of them will be facing away like this one up here. So let's do from the side. So I'm just gonna use this little one to put my green in. It is nice if you have this same size brush for different, so I wouldn't have to wash this to go back into the pink, but I don't have another one of these brushes. I have another brand, but I just wanna use, just to simplify it. It is nice to have 2 brushes so that you can use green and pink and not have to keep washing in between. And that saves you some product too. But right now I'm just kind of thickening this stem. I don't follow any like specific steps. Like if I see I want to do something, I'll do it right away. So I'm thickening the stem while I see it. And then I'm just going to start to build on top. Whoops, that happens a lot. I just hit the paper. That is fine. So while that's wet, I'm just gonna put one in right now. And this will be like facing us. See, you can fix mistakes. And then just since we have this here, I'll show you, because it happens, I'm gonna use just a piece of towel and I'm just gonna blot, and that will lift, that could lift that up too. It might not lift the pink exactly up at this stage, but now the green will be lifted a little bit more. And now you have this shape of the flower. So, okay. Now let's try from the side again like we did. So that petal is facing this way. This petal is gonna face that way. You're gonna see some peeking out from the back. These gonna go like that. And let's say there's one sort of bent over and you're only gonna see part of it like that. And then you can go into the green and you can just sort of make those little dots. and connect them so they're coming out a little bit. And those are going to be, so we could do that again on this side. Draw in a stem here. And then we're going to just paint out some, see how if, it's almost like you can see the stem and it's green in there. So if you want it to be sort of sticking up like that, like there's a little cap at the end, we'll just do it how this is. So this is going to be, let's just meet that stem there, and this is going to be if it's sort of open but still a little bit closed. It's like you're sort of looking from underneath almost. You could just lift some of that paint up and you can add just a little cap there. I guess that's what I would call it. Where the flower meets the stem, it's almost like rounded. And then these green lines go through the bottom. So this is the bottom sort of a view. But then very lightly, you're still going to see some petals peeking through. So this is a very loose sort of a floral. And these are going to dry and we're going to go back into those. And this one, I guess I want it to be facing us this way. So you can kind of see how that opens up that way. This looks a little empty over here, but for the sake of this, we'll just leave it a little bit empty for now. And then I'm going to go back in and we're going to start to do those layers. So I think I want this a little bit darker, just so you can see that layer. So in between these petals here, we're going to add more petals. Ideally, you want to leave the center open. I didn't really leave too much space there, but that's fine. We're just going to drop some green in there. This one's layered. Layered. And then this is the mistake one, but it's actually nice. It's a happy mistake. So we'll do the same thing. We're layering in between. And then we can always layer these. Maybe this one's, I'll just leave it like that. I don't want to mess with it too much. So we want to put some more depth in there to show that this is sort of in the front. Let's say we want to put those centers in. But we're just going to stipple those centers. And again, it doesn't have to be exact. Like maybe you want to make these a little darker. This one looks like it's pretty dry. You can always feel that one's still damp. This one's not as damp in the center. But as those dry, you can start making these lines in between. So it seems like it comes from like underneath a stem of the flower, like at the point of where it meets the stalk. So I'm just gonna start putting them in anywhere I see like the stem connecting. And I'm using the round brush. This is the little round. You can use the tip of your number 6 or your cat's, whichever, your dagger, whichever one you want. I showed you 3 different ways, but I don't want to overwhelm you. I just want to show you that there are options and there is no wrong or right way to do anything in watercolor. Like there really isn't. Whatever works for you. So they seem to be like pretty overwhelming. So I'm just gonna put in, and it doesn't go all the way to the bottom. So these stick up, and again, like, you can have them dance and then meet. Look how fun they are. And this is your style, so you do what you want. Look how fun they are. And this is your style, so you do what you want. And then I'm imagining that these would kind of be behind. And this probably would be a little bit more filled in with flowers. And then on this side, there's just some stems coming out. And there's a lot of, these are just buds. There's no flowers on this side. Might be a little bit too wet, but they will dry down. Again, water control is probably one of the trickiest things with watercolor. And just give it the idea of a bud opening. Same on this side. If we do have this dagger brush here, just because I did show you, this is gonna come out. And you can sort of squiggle it. Just do all different little marks. This is gonna be a little bit more looser interpretation. And yeah, I just like to add a little depth in there. Give you some interest in there. But I do really like the flowiness of these little pieces that come out. Okay. And then I want to go back in and I want to add a little bit to the centers. This one needs some. Now that they're dry, these buds are dry, so you can go in and add some lines. If you want, or you could just leave them. Add some details. Add some details. And then again, you can, or you don't have to, you can add those little lines in the petals. So this, just to give a little detail, a little more realistic. And it's not exact. You can take your time and do a very exact. That is totally up to you. Your style is your style, and that is the beauty. If you want to fill in the spaces, you can definitely do that. So if you want some to be peeking out from behind, you can add some in, just quick like this. Now I'm using this little round brush, but this is optional if you want to fill in those spaces there. Like, I feel like it needs to be fuller, but again, it doesn't need to be. So this one's kind of opening like that. That one is a little I don't know about that one. Those little dots up here. So you're seeing it from the side. And they're going in like that. And then we're gonna have a stem in the background, but it's kind of hidden. Hints of those petals. That's kind of a looser way to do that. Just like hints of it in the background. Hints of the petals coming out. But yeah, that's really it. That's how I'm creating my larkspur. If you want, I'm just gonna, for the sake of it, just that since I made I'm gonna add in some more buds. We're gonna add in more buds. I'm gonna do a lot of buds on top. I like the way the buds look, and I like how they open up. So this is just sort of a more looser approach, a loose, quick sketch. So this one's opening. This one is opening up. And I'm gonna start to add some purple into this slowly. And they're gonna bleed together. And then I'm gonna just paint sort of the idea of a larkspur. So we're painting pretty quick. This one's gonna be a little looser. And as you go down, like you want some of them to be a little bit more realistic. And then some of them you're just gonna be making marks. It's just gonna be mark making. And they're all gonna be sort of blobs put together. But this is a more of a loose interpretation of watercolor florals. So you kind of have the idea that it's an airy flowing plant, but maybe you don't know it's exactly a larkspur. Just gonna start making those fun marks. And just sort of letting your hand dance around the paper. While these are still a little wet, you can drop in some blue, some ultramarine, just to give those centers a little bit of different color. Like a looser, flowier. So if maybe you have 5 minutes and you want to paint something fun, maybe you'll do something like this. And that is it. That is how I would paint larkspurs. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. I thank you so much for being here, and I cannot wait to see you next time.